Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Doyle, and I've got the privilege of being Council's Chief Executive Officer. And I'd like to, and I'm your co-host today with Adrian Greenwood, who's our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander lead in Council. So I'd like to welcome everyone to Knox City Council's National Sorry Day flag raising ceremony, a really important day on Council's calendar every year. And unfortunately, the restrictions have meant we've had to make a last-minute consolidation of the event to smaller than what it would have been, but we were really buoyed by the growing community interest in today that we've experienced through our ticket issuing over the last few weeks. So that's really great to see. I'd like to start by saying that Knox City Council acknowledges that we're on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people, and we pay our respects to elders both past and present. I'll now hand over to Adrian.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Adrian Greenwood, Warramah, living on the Wurundjeri and Bunurong land. It's great to see so many of community here today and online. Of course, we had hoped that you'd all be here, but that is not the case. My role inside Knox is to grow the relationships between country, the traditional owners, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, build the capacity inside Knox, and to increase the respect and recognition of First Nations people in Knox. It's our privilege to have a number of First Nation elders with us today and participating in our ceremony. I'd like to begin with an apology from Uncle Colin Hunter, Senior Wurundjeri Elder. He is unable to attend to give the welcome of country today, but he asked me to pass on his best wishes to all of us at this event. We're honoured to have Karen Millward, the chair of Mullumalum Indigenous Gathering Place. We have Uncle David Farrell, a local resident and elder. We have Auntie Jackie, another local resident and elder. We have Uncle John Baxter speaking, a Victorian Honour Roll inductee and local loved elder. Chris Hume is a local Aboriginal leader with us today. Ash Dargan, a local Aboriginal leader and amazing didgeridoo artist. Would you like to introduce Karen?
Thanks, Adrian. And amongst the leadership that we have today, we're pleased that a number of our councillors have joined us. I'd just like to introduce them to you. We have our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Suzanne Hawkins, Councillor Marcia Timmins-Leach, Councillor Judith Dwight, Councillor Nicole Seymour, and Councillor Yvonne Allred, just there. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Karen Millward to you all, who will deliver the Acknowledgement of Country. Karen is a Yorta Yorta woman and chair of the Mullumalum Indigenous Gathering Place Board and a well-known local Aboriginal leader, advocate, consultant. Please welcome Karen.
Thank you very much, Tony, for that warm welcome. I'd like to say Galpa Gaka Ananya Gaka Yalo Nalawa Yembina Yorta Yorta Waka. So that's in my Yorta Yorta language. I welcome everybody and I invite you to come and walk with us during Reconciliation Week. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we are meeting on today, the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong peoples. I pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I'd like to also say that today is National Sorry Day, a very important day in the reconciliation calendar. It's also important to note that this week actually celebrates many different things that happened over our course of history to actually ensure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have the same rights as other Australians. So Sorry Day is so important because it was the day that the Bringing Them Home report was released, and it made 54 recommendations, and not all those recommendations have been implemented, which is very unfortunate. I was really glad to see last year that Minister Jennings at the time announced that there would be reparations for the Stolen Generation members. So I want to say that I pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children who were forcibly removed under past government policies and practices, and pay my respects to their families and the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for that acknowledgement to country, and also thank you for the significant leadership you provide to the wider community. I'd now like to welcome Chris Hume, a Yorta Yorta Bunurong man and men's work for Mullen Mullen Indigenous Gathering Place, to perform the fire lighting and smoking, smoking ceremony. And Chris is going to be assisted by Adrian Greenwood, who you met earlier.
Yawa te bandalanina kiori ora walitika yambana Chris. Today I'm going to do a smoking ceremony. What the smoking ceremony will represent is a cleansing from our Woiwurrung leaves. We'll also have our blackwood leaves put on there for age and strength, and also our cherry ballard, which gives us the ability to grow, learn, and be as one. To do this smoking ceremony, I need a couple of different components. I need my stringy bark, I need my fungus, and I need my woods and my leaves there to get that fire going. I'm going to do that as we go now. There's some left, the Woiwurrung leaf for cleansing. Get that smoke around you, get it all over you, wash your body with that smoke as it comes around. For those who can pass through the smoke, That blackwood smoke, that golden wattle, that smoke there is giving us age and strength. It grows to a very, very old tree and very strong tree. This cherry ballot gives us the ability to learn together and stay as one. You just stay there, I'll come around past you and get the smoke on you. Thank you and welcome to Bunurong and Wurundjeri land.
Thank you, Chris and Adrian. Our flag raisers today are local residents and elders, Uncle David Farrell, Auntie Jack Harney, both significant, much-loved Aboriginal leaders, and Karen Millwood, the chair of the Mulla Mulla Indigenous Gathering Place. I'd like to call forward our flag raisers who are almost this close. Thank you to our flag raisers. It is now my great pleasure to hand over to our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Suzanne Lawkins.
Thank you, Tony and Adrian, and good morning everyone, and welcome to our Sorry Day flag raising ceremony. I'm deeply humbled to be here today. I would first likely to acknowledge my fellow councillors. I would first like to acknowledge my fellow councillors, Councillor Yvonne Allred, Councillor Jude Dwight, Councillor Nicole Seymour, Councillor Marcia Timmersleach, our local Aboriginal leader Chris Hume, inductee of the Victorian Aboriginal Honour Roll Uncle John Baxter, Chair of the Mulla Mulla Indigenous Gathering Place Board Karen Millwood, Mulla Indigenous Gathering Place members, board and staff, leaders from various Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander services who are here with us today, Knox City Council Chief Executive Officer Tony Doyle, staff, online community who are joining us here and online. Thank you, Chris, for conducting the smoking ceremony and for sharing his culture with us. Thank you also to Karen for her acknowledgement of country and for her continued leadership in the local community and for the role she plays in helping people understand culture and country. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are here on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders, past and present and emerging. I also acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who have joined us today here and online. Today is National Sorry Day, and it's an important day for all Australians. It's a day for us to commemorate the painful history of past government policies that resulted in the stolen generations. Today we remember the many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children who have been forcibly removed from their families throughout our history. We acknowledge the trauma and loss caused by children being forcibly removed on the children, their parents and families, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities across Australia. We recognise that this has been an intergenerational impact and that the trauma and loss continues to affect many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and communities today. We take this opportunity to acknowledge the strength of stolen generation survivors to reflect on how we can all play a part in healing of our nation. We recommit to progressing the reconciliation here in Knox in both practical and symbolic ways. Sorry Day provides a meaningful opportunity for all Australians to learn about our history. Some parts of our history are hard to talk about, but must be acknowledged for us to heal as a nation. For this reason, I would like to share a little story about the history of the stolen generation and Sorry Day. Stolen generations refer to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children who were forcibly removed from their families between the mid-1800s and 1970. These children were placed in institutions or foster care with non-Indigenous families, disconnecting them from their country and culture. In 1997, the stories of these children and their family were brought to Australia's Federal Parliament in the Bringing Them Home report. The report brought to light some incredibly shocking and heartbreaking stories and statistics. It estimated that a minimum of 1 in 10 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were forcibly removed from their families and communities in the period up to 1970. National Sorry Day began on 26th of May 1998, 1 year after the Bringing Them Home report was tabled in Parliament. In 2008, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd made a historic apology. This apology continues to be relevant today. I would like to read a part of this apology on behalf of Knox City Council to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our community. As Prime Minister Kevin Rudd said, this time has now come for the nation to turn a new page in Australia's history by bringing the rights of the past, so righting the wrongs of the past, and so moving forward with confidence to our future. We apologise for the laws and policies of successive parliaments and governments that have inflicted profound grief, suffering and loss of these our fellow Australians. We apologise especially for the removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families and their communities and their country. For the pain and suffering and hurt of these stolen generations and their descendants and their families left behind, we are sorry. Acknowledging Sorry Day each year is an important part of our commitment to reconciliation in Knox. By acknowledging past mistakes, we can move forward in an inclusive and cohesive community. Tomorrow is the start of National Reconciliation Week, a week that invites us all to learn about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and histories. This year's theme is more than a word: reconciliation takes action. It's a theme that asks us all to consider how we can each contribute to reconciliation in Australia. It's a fitting theme given that Reconciliation Week includes the anniversary of two events where Australians come together to take action on reconciliation. The first of these is the anniversary of the 1967 referendum, where Australians voted to change two parts of the Constitution that discriminated against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The second is the anniversary of the 1992 High Court Mabo decision, which recognises native title and the First Nations people are the traditional custodians of the land. These historic events show us that change is possible when Australians take action for reconciliation. Around us we have sea of hands. These hands symbolise community for reconciliation, rights and respect. The first sea of hands was installed in front of Parliament House in Canberra in 1997 in support of native title and reconciliation. Today, as we look at these hands, I encourage you to reflect on the powerful significance of Sorry Day. I also encourage you to take the time to learn something new about Australia's story. Let us use this moment to pause, remember, reflect, and reaffirm our commitment to working towards healing and a more harmonious, inclusive community. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Councillor Lawkins. Now I'd like to invite Adrian back to the lectern, who's going to introduce Uncle John Baxter.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Uncle John Baxter. He's a Lashy Nunga man. He's well-loved elder in our local community. He was inducted into the Victorian Aboriginal Honour Roll in 2016. John believes that change occurs when people take action. His philosophy has inspired him to advocate for reconciliation, for the rights of Aboriginal people living with disabilities, and for a greater understanding of the past to improve outcomes for the future. John spent his first 2 years of life in hospital during the era of stolen generation. When he was discharged from hospital, he was not returned to his family, but placed in temporary care and by the Victorian government. A passionate advocate for reconciliation, cross-cultural understanding, John believes that programs and initiatives aiming to achieve reconciliation must be more than symbolic gestures. They must have practical outcomes which benefit the Aboriginal people. Please welcome Uncle John.
Very kindly. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that indeed we are the land of the Kulin Nation, the Wurundjeri tribe, and as an Aboriginal elder I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present, and also for those emerging as well. I'd like to thank the the people of Knox and Knox Council for holding this event, especially today when just a very recent times that we've been presented with new restrictions within this COVID environment that we've all had to endure for quite some period of time now. For our elders that are here this morning. I pay my respects and welcome. For the dignitaries here from Knox Council as well, I pay my respects and welcome to you as well. I'm indeed a proud Narungga man, but for a long time, not knowing even that I was an Aboriginal person or what that meant when I was growing up. And I still have very vivid memories of being in high school and being identified not only as a person with disability, but also as an Aboriginal person. And it was not only the confusion and lack of knowledge that really challenged me, but also troubled me in that part of my life, and eventually gave me the desire to say, well, who am I? Where do I belong? If I am an Aboriginal person, do I have a family? Do I have parents? Do I have siblings? Do I have brothers and sisters? And so the focus went away from disability and went on to who I was as a person. And I feel very privileged that with the support of my foster family, I was able to connect with my Indigenous family, my birth family. And very clearly I remember the day that I walked into a room up in the town of Robinvale, which is really a room full of strangers, people I'd never seen before in my life. But also that room was full of family. Because my dad was there, one of my sisters was there, many cousins, aunties, uncles, etc, etc. And like most people, we found that incredibly overwhelming and sort of had this ideas in the days and weeks leading up to going up and meeting the family of what the family might be like, you know, how proud I would be to meet my dad and that I'd finally fit in and all my questions would be answered. And I thought, you know, get a little camera and I'd take lots and lots of photos. This is before the days when mobile phones were around. This is old school stuff. And you had your little Kodak camera and you were ready to go. Wind it on, click, wind it on, click. But strangely enough, on that day, I think I took 2 or 3 photos. I wish I'd taken a lot more. But I still treasure the photos that I did take, because that was the beginning of a new era where I was to identify who I was as a human being, who I was as a person. And then it made me realise things like 1967 and the change in the Constitution that allowed me to be a human being rather than part of the flora and fauna of Australia, and how significant that was. And how that led to giving Aboriginal community members a voice. And that was just so important, because you realise the tragedy, the trauma, the generational trauma of children being removed in large numbers, and those children initially not even realising what had occurred, and the path that they were being sent on, being raised by non-Aboriginal families, and not being able to have any connection to their culture, to their language, to their mob, nothing at all. And so they're now missing in their role within that family. And it's taking away your identity of who you are. And then my hope is that, you know, all children who were removed do go back and do have the opportunity to meet their families and have some opportunity to be able to fit in with their own community. I feel very lucky that I've had that opportunity, and through organisations like Link Up Victoria, Connecting Home, the Cree Heritage Trust, I've been able to get a family tree and realise that my name's on that family tree. I do belong, and I had the real pleasure of meeting my brothers and my sisters, and had the real honour of meeting my dad. And that was a really strange experience, because there was great joy, but there's also great sorrow in that. And I sort of feel the lasting feelings that he had. There was a great deal of regret as well, because being able to read some of the transcripts and documents that I was able to get many, many years after this had occurred, the letters from my parents requesting and wondering where I was, and could they see me? Could they get a photograph of me? Could they make a phone call and talk to me? And continuously the response of that was no. We're sorry, that they thought that might be too traumatising for me, or that I wasn't ready for that experience. And that was the way the department treated children. They didn't want them to connect back with their families or their communities. And at the end of that time, when you finally became an adult, you felt that you were just thrown out the door and left to fight for yourselves. And this trauma continues today, because although I've connected with my family and endeavoured to connect with my community, I kind of feel like I'm doing it as a guest, as an outsider, that somebody who's observing the tradition and ceremony, that I still haven't understood or earned the right to participate and lead that ceremony when I'm on my own country, which is Narung's country. And so it's a sad reflection, but it also gives me opportunity and it gives me strength, because it also gives me a voice today. And you're saying, well, what can be done about this to help support members of the stolen generation, and especially those who haven't had the opportunity to reconnect with their family and their mob and their culture and language. And I sincerely hope that in the future that governments and organisations will realise the depth of the hurt and sadness that has been caused, as within the speech that Kevin gave those years ago, and that we'll see real change within the understanding of all Australians that wrongs were made, and those wrongs need to be righted. Because when we heal, we are healing all of Australia. We are putting all of us in a better space, where we can say that we are proud of the actions that we have taken. But we are not there yet. But I hope days like today, groups like Knox City Council and the members that I look around here today and those online, the elders that are here to support us as well, together we can help make that change and bring forth a better tomorrow. I'd like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share with you today on National Sorry Day and the start of National Reconciliation Week. I wish you have a very good week, and thank you very kindly.
Thank you, Uncle John, for that really heartfelt personal account. And we need to hear more and more personal stories such as yours to really, truly understand the impact of the stolen generation. So thank you, and everyone could give Uncle John another round of applause. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ash Dargan, who is a Larrakia artist from the top end and one of Australia's premier performers and recording artists on the didgeridoo. His distinct blend of Australian Indigenous instrumental world music has achieved world renown in both recorded works and live performances since 1995. Ash was a cultural ambassador for the Northern Territory during the 90s and the 2000s and toured with Coloured Stone. His lyrical craft of storytelling, musical performance has been described as capturing the rhythmic soul of the Australian landscape while reflecting a deep connection and reverence for Aboriginal culture. Over to you, Ash.
Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm used to using a microphone, used to tour the world a bit and do this kind of thing. So what an honour it is to be here, Sorry Day. And I'd just like to remind everyone the stories that Uncle John told today, the things that we speak about, the things that reconciliation is about. It touches every Aboriginal person's life and it changes their life. The power in the movement of reconciliation in the country, of every time we gather together like this to remember the areas, the milestones that we have fought and won for, and that continues to make things better for Australia, but particularly for Aboriginal people, particularly for our young people that are coming up through the school system today. They're getting a different story, aren't they? They're getting a different story to the one that Uncle John got, you know. The process of reconciliation is to give them a different experience and to give our country a chance so that we can all stand together on this country and know what that is, to feel that spirit together, to, you know, to have a true bicultural identity. You know, that's what we're moving towards, and I tell you what, every step that we take, we're closer to that line. So I'd like to do 3 pieces for you today that speak about, from the Uluru Statement of the Heart, a document that was done around the base of Uluru in 2017 by a contingent of traditional owners from all around Australia. And this statement had 3 principles to it that spoke to the constitutional, for our voice to be included in the Constitution of Australia, and for us to have a voice. Having a voice in Parliament is going to be very, very important. And of course, that voice at the moment has been hijacked by the story of sorrow and trauma that we have to tell all the time. But that's going to change, you know. Our voice is also one of strength. Our voice is one of resilience, of course, but it's of deep wisdom. And unfortunately, that part of our voice has been taken away, has been hijacked by the process of having to win back our human rights. So, but that voice that we've been telling you about in truth-telling, that's just one part of us. You know, there's of course a lot more to us. So what I'm going to do for you today is a part of that. So this is about voice. So I'm going to put you into a space now around like a billabong. This piece is, I call it Wetlands. It's off my Territory album that I released in 2000. And it features all the bird sounds and animal sounds that you'll find taking a walk through country and a walkabout up in the top end of Australia. So listen out, you'll hear frogs, parrots, brolgas, eagles, everything. Thank you very much. Maybe you heard some animal sounds in there that you recognised. This next piece I'd like to play. It's a very unusual instrument. This is another foundational principle of us achieving constitutional recognition as outlined in the Uluru Statement of the Heart, and I'm talking about treaty. Treaty is an understanding, a peacemaking between two peoples. And the treaty that we will eventually have will be one of peace, one of equality, where there's no more disparity between us. And that's a place of harmony. That's achieving real peace, you know, beyond understanding, a harmony. So this next piece is about that harmony between two voices. And I'd like to introduce this instrument to you. It's actually a Native American flute. I picked it up over there when I was meeting the First Nations people, listening to their story, their history, their treaties. And I was talking to a fellow and I showed him this instrument here in my grandmother's language, the mamalama. And he said, well, why don't we try and make one of our flutes and put the mamalama with the flute and have it in the same instrument? And you'll see this flute here has two holes. One side, it's a traditional Native American flute, has all the notes. But on the other side, there's no finger holes. It's like a didgeridoo, and it's meant to be like that. It's just a drone instrument. It's just one sound, continuous, beautiful sonorous drone next to that flute. So I call this my Treaty Flute. And I'd like to play this for you now. You'll hear that first pipe come in. That's your voice. And then you'll hear the drone come in, our voice, and you'll hear these things together. Treaty Flute. Isn't that something? Right, so this last piece I have for you is that third principle of gaining constitutional recognition. And of course I'm talking about truth. And this next piece I'm going to play to you was inspired by a spirit that lives up in the Northern Territory in the rock shelf, the Arnhem Land Escarpment, that divides what you understand as Kakadu National Park into Arnhem Land. And there's lots of spirit figures painted into that country there. And I learned my culture on that country, on that land. So I'm talking about the spirit of Namagon. Namagon is the lightning man, and he's also a lawman. And he corrects things that are out of balance. And he does that with the truth. He does that with a great deal of power. But when he does this, when that power of the lightning does hit the land, it discharges through the land and it actually spreads energy throughout the land and gives everything life force. So in essence, truth actually gives us life. It gives us the energy to keep going. So I'd like to play you a rhythm, and this represents the approaching storm, the approaching wet season in the Northern Territory that precedes the dry season, with the dry lightning that precedes the rains. This piece is called Namagon. Thank you very much, and that's it from me. The three principles of the Uluru Statement of the Heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ash, for that incredibly moving and powerful performance. So thank you once again. Thank you. So that brings us to an end of this part of our acknowledgement today. On behalf of our councils, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's shared with us today and marked Sorry Day at Knox, and to all those that have watched online through our live streaming. Of course, thank you to Adrian Greenwood and all of our staff who've helped participate and get today together. The extra restrictions on us yesterday threw a last-minute curveball which had the team scurrying and changing the event quite considerably in the space of a few hours. So thank you, Adrian. Finally, I'd like to thank all of those who've joined us today, especially the members of the local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community. Today, Knox joins with all of Australia to stop and recognise the First Nations people of this land. In doing so, we reaffirm our commitment to work towards healing and a more harmonious and inclusive community. Thank you, everyone.